In this video, you will learn how to animate 2D drawings and 2D art in Blender 2.9. You will learn how to use an image manipulation program to prepare your 2D art for Blender. You will learn how to use an empty with a stretch to constraint to set up basic animation with your 2D art. You will learn how to use and set up a bendy bone to control your 2D drawing or 2D art. You will learn how to rig a 2D head as well as a 2D jaw. You will learn how to attach your 2D drawings or art to armature bones. You will learn how to weight paint to better control how the parts of your 2D art move with the armature bones. You will learn how to set up your 2D drawings eyes to blink. You will learn how to use bones to control shape keys for easier animation. This tutorial is taught in a step-by-step fashion where I try to explain not just what I'm doing, but why I'm doing what I'm doing. Thanks for looking at this tutorial, and I hope that you enjoy it. Special thanks to my daughter Aliana Arango for drawing these dragon characters as well as letting me use this art for the tutorial. There also will be a link up in the description where you can obtain this artwork so that you can follow along with the tutorial. Hi, this is Ali Arango of LittleGuyCGI.com. Today I want to show you how to animate 2D drawings and art in Blender 2.92. So let's get started. Okay, what you see on the screen is a piece of artwork from my youngest daughter, Aliana Arango. I like the art style she used in this. This is what we're going to be using to animate. I did a tutorial on animating 2D drawings and art in Blender back in 2013. So when I saw this artwork here, I thought this would look neat to see it animated. So this is what we're going to be working with. I'll put up a link so that you can get to this artwork. Okay, Blender 2.92 particularly is amazing. I mean, Blender itself is a spectacular program. The things you can do in 3D with Blender are incredible. The new things you can do in a grease pencil, which mainly deals with 2D art, are also, it's spectacular what you can do. That being said, the ability that Blender has to take 2D drawings as well as other 2D art and animate them is also spectacular. I have seen things on this. I haven't seen too much recently. So that's one of the other reasons I wanted to do this tutorial. Okay, so to get started, we're going to, well, the cube's already selected. We're going to press X to delete the cube. Select delete to delete the cube. The way I like to work in Blender is I like to press the N key and then go to view and then use this. Well, when you look down, you'll see this 3D navigation. To see this 3D navigation, you need to go to edit, preferences, add-ons, put a check mark next to 3D view : 3D navigation. There's multiple ways to navigate your view in Blender. This is the way that I like to use for my own work, also for tutorials. Just find it very useful to just to be able to click these buttons and maneuver the view. Okay, to work your way through this tutorial, you're going to use Blender, which we're in now. You're also going to use GIMP. GIMP is an image manipulation program. Very similar to Photoshop. Often when you hear, sometimes when you hear people talk about blimp, talk about GIMP, you'll hear them, try to trash it. In my work, I have taught professionally the Adobe Master Suite, Adobe Photoshop. From doing that, I have access to the Adobe programs. Don't get me wrong, Adobe Photoshop is the best image manipulation program. That being said, I have access to Adobe Photoshop. I choose to use GIMP. GIMP is an excellent program. Anyway, What we're going to do now is we're going to open up GIMP. If you don't have GIMP and you want a copy of GIMP, you can go to gimp.org to download it. You can also go to portable apps and download a portable version of GIMP on a thumb drive where you plug it in and it'll work off of the thumb drive without putting anything on your computer. Okay, what you're looking at now is GIMP 2.10. I'm going to go to the upper left of the screen, go to Open. So now I'm going to the folder that has the artwork in it. This is just a message saying, GIMP is going to basically make the colors work correctly from the image. So here is the picture here. Okay, in GIMP, if you hold Control, then roll your mouse, you can zoom the view. If you hold the middle mouse button, you can pan the view. The two image manipulation programs that I tend to use with Blender are GIMP as well as Krita. Excellent programs. Anyway, when you bring an image into an image manipulation program, the first thing I would recommend you do is look to your layer panel. That's to the right here. I'm going to right click and then I'm going to go to duplicate layer. This is mainly so that if we do something that we don't like on one layer, we have a backup layer. That's how I was taught when I went to school. Stuck with it, tends to work well. So I tend to often have a duplicate of whatever I'm working on. So the first thing we want to do is we want to separate these pictures from the background. So I'm going to select this eye. This hides this bottom layer right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this free select tool. I'm going to drag this selection around this first character here. Press Enter. I'm going to use the shortcut keys, Control X to cut, and then Control Alt V to paste this back in. So Control X. So I just cut that, and I'm going to do Control Alt V to paste that in. The one thing that is interesting about GIMP when I first started using GIMP is this is probably the biggest difference between GIMP and Photoshop. See this floating selection panel to the right? I've used GIMP for years. I'm still not sure exactly why they do this, but in Photoshop, you would paste and you would just have the picture. So be aware that when you cut and paste in GIMP, you'll have this floating selection. What I do to have the floating selection work like a regular selection, it's not a big deal, is select, create a new layer. Okay, now that we have this layer here, I'm going to hide that layer, go back to the original layer. Pretty much going to do this process again. So I'm clicking. Each time I click, I have a straight line selection. Then you want to connect this selection up. I'm going to hold Control, press X, then hold Control, Alt, and then V to paste this. Then I'm going to select New Layer. Okay, we're going to hide that layer. Select the layer that we're working on again. Same thing. We're going to press Enter. Okay, we now have to press Enter. Control X. Control Alt V. Make a new layer. Hide that. Select the original layer we were working on. Okay, same process. Taking care to dodge the lettering there. One of the things when you're working with art, digital art, particularly, I'm going to press Enter. You don't have to press Enter to lock that in. Okay, Control X, Control Alt V. make new layer. A lot of times it's not what you can do. It's which process do you take. There's multiple ways of doing things, so that's one of the things that is difficult often. So when working with art, sometimes the freedom that you have can be the difficulty. Like, what do you choose? How do you choose to work? I'm going to press Enter, Control X, Control Alt V, make a new layer. Okay, I'm going to hide those. So, very similar process. Press Enter, Control X, Control Alt V, then make a new layer. Okay, so now we have the dragons separated from this. So I'm going to go here, just how I tend to do things. I'm going to duplicate this. So I can go back. Like I said, there's multiple ways of doing things. My particular way of doing things, so I'm showing you how I go through. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to what's called the clone brush, right? So what this brush does is this brush takes what you're over, so see the circle that I'm over there, and then it lets you paint with that. So we're going to use that to paint in these blue areas here. So to do that, you're going to hold Control. When I did that, now when I move my mouse, see how there's a circle left there? So that circle will now, whenever I click, I have this color as well as like the kind of like that other color that's mixed in there. So I could drag as well, like I can drag. And then eventually when I get to the blue, I'll start to paint the blue. So what I typically do is I'm pushing and then releasing to fill in this blue. So once I have this patch here, so I'm still taking that blue out. So now what I'm going to do is if I press the bracket key, I can make this bigger. I'll hold Control to move this. When I say this, I'm talking about that circle. So what I'm doing is I'm holding the bracket key to make the circle bigger, right? So now I'm going to hold Control. So now I can work faster because I have a much bigger area to work with. So the clone brush is very useful. So I'm taking out the blue. When it comes to the background, because the dragon characters are going to be covering up most of this, don't be too concerned about, how much the background changes. Shrinking the brush because there's this little piece right here. Up here. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to File, Export As. So in GIMP, the way you get things out is you I'm going to drag in background. You export them out rather than saving. So I'm exporting this out. These other options pop up. I'm going to select keep them the same, and I export it. So now I have that outside of GIMP. Okay, so I'm going to bring back this first picture. I'm going to select here. So this is the picture by itself, and that circle there is the clone brush that's still on. I'll select to go off of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select this fuzzy selection brush. I'm going to, oops, I'm not selected on it. So you want to be selected on the layer. So I'm selecting this. So that gave me a nice selection there. So I selected everything but the picture here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Control, press I. That should have inverted the selection. So then I'm going to do similar to what I did before, Control X, Control Alt V, then put that, paste that back in, select, make a new layer, hide this. Oh, wow, I'm surprised we had such a clean selection. That worked out very well. Okay, I'm going to hide that, then bring this in, select that layer, select here, hold Control, press I to invert. So I selected everything but the selection. Then I inverted the selection. So now the selection's selected. Hold Control X, then do Control Alt V, and then select make a new layer. Then hide that. We don't need this. This is this extra material. So I'm going to right click and then select delete the layer. Okay, we're going to hide this layer, bring this layer back. We'll select here. We're getting such a clean selection here. What we can do is we'll go to select, invert. It's just like doing Control I. Then what we can do is, actually, we don't even need to do that. I'm going to do Control Shift A. We can select here and then press delete, which is excellent. Control Shift A. So this will speed things up as long as we keep getting those very clean selections. Excellent. Control Shift A. So what I'm doing now, if the selection wasn't that clean, you would do like we did before. However, we're getting such clean selections, we can just select what's selected here. We'll press delete, Control Shift A. Much faster. You see how we didn't get such a clean selection there? So yeah, this is normally what we would get. So if you get a selection like that, what you can do is now our background, because it's not super clean looking. Don't be too concerned with getting every piece. Control Shift A to deselect of this this leftover material. So right here, I'm pushing be aware I'm pushing the delete button on my keyboard. I'm not pushing backspace. I'm saying that because often I'll think backspace when working with image manipulation programs, and I'm not doing that here. Control Shift A to deselect. So what I'm going to do is bring these back. I'm going to do layer, new from visible, right? So what I did, I made a whole, this isn't necessary. This is things I'll do. So we have all these. However, we have that work that we did. So to make sure I don't lose that work, typically what I'll do is I'll And this isn't the finished work. However, if something happens, we have a lot of work done. It would be much easier to select the head with the backgrounds removed rather than if we had to start over from the beginning. Again, this isn't necessary. See this .jpeg? This will not give us a transparency. This checkerboard is the transparency here. So what you want to do is go to select file by type, scroll down to PNG, which is one of the file types that gives us transparency, and then export this out as a PNG. If you export this out as a JPEG, what you would find is that you had a black background. Okay, these dragon characters here are going to be the same with the exception of this. So we're going to do a very basic rig setup to animate these. This one we're going to make a more advanced rig setup, and I'll tell you why later. So what we want to do is we want to get these images out where the actual image isn't this big, right? So if I hide everything but this image, right? So if I go like this, and then I export this image out, we'll have this image, but all of this space here. We don't want that, right? We want to crop this. However, if we crop this now, it'll be difficult to continue working with our other pictures. So what I'm going to do is with this selected, I'm going to go to Edit, Copy. You could do Control C as well. And then I'm going to go to Edit, Paste As, New Image. And the reason why this is good is I wasn't even thinking this. We don't have to crop this. We don't have to do anything. What we can do is just export this out. And because we're just exporting, well, we won't duplicate this. So I'm going to name this 1. And we are exporting this as a PNG. Make sure you're exporting this as a PNG. So that's excellent. So we'll hide that to make things clear. We'll select this. Make sure you're on the layer that you want to work with as well. This one we'll leave as it is. We'll hide this. We'll bring this one up. Select that layer. Then we'll go Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste As, New Image. There it goes. File, Export As. We'll name this 3. Just counting going across. And then export that out. We'll go back to the original file. Hide that. Unhide this. Select that. Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste As, New Image. File, Export As 4. Go back to the original picture, hide this, unhide that, make sure we're selected on it, Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste As, New Image, Edit, not edit, File, Export As 5, Export. Okay, go back to the original picture, select this, unhide this, select this, Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste As, New Image, File, Export As 6, Export, Export. Back to the original picture, hide that, unhide this, select this picture. Okay, so what is different about this picture where we're going to add some more animated controls to this rather than the other dragons? And I'll bring back, this is the one visible image we made of all the other dragons. So this is one layer, not to confuse you. If you look at all of the dragons, they all have the same thing going on except one. And what that is all of these dragons have their mouths shut. This dragon has its mouth open. Because the mouth is open, this allows us to more easily work, add extra animation to this. So I just hit that, brought this back, I'm selected on this layer. Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to select the head and separate that from the neck. So we're on our free select tool. So the top really isn't important. Where it gets important is where it being the head gets where it connects with the rest of the body. So I'm going around the ear, being careful of the black outline that makes up the shape of the ear, as well as the rest of the head. You could zoom in to make this easier. The head is more important. Getting a decent selection around the head. You can always go back, so don't stress too much. Now, when we come over this transparency, we don't really have to be careful because this is transparent. So now what we'll do is press enter. So we have this selection. So we'll go to edit, cut, edit, and now what we want to do is go to paste in place, right? We go to make a new layer. So now this head is separated from the neck, which is what we want. Okay, what we want to do now is with this head, we want to separate the top part of the head from the jaw. So we're going to select this layer that's the neck. We're selecting on this head layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to select right here this jaw. Similar to what we did to the neck, we're trying to be careful about the black line that makes up the head. Once we get to transparency, we don't have to be as careful. We'll press enter. So we have this jaw selected. What we're going to do is go to edit. We're going to cut, edit, paste in place, make a new layer. Okay, so this is the jaw. So when I select this, you can see that jaw is separated from the rest of the head. So one of the things that we want to do with the jaw is, so here's the head layer. So what we can do is we can see the difference between the head and the jaw. See this right here? We're looking towards the right side of the screen. We're going to lower down the opacity of the head. So now we can still see the head. I'm going to hold control to roll my mouse in. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to pan. We need to make up, and this is one of the things when you're animating 2D art, you make up areas that weren't originally there when you're working from a drawing, like we're working here. And that allows you to animate without having things disappear, if that makes sense. So we want to be on the jaw layers. To make this simpler, we'll select here. We'll name this jaw. Double click so I can change the name. When you see me select the eye, I do that to know what I'm on. So this is the head. So we'll select, double click there, name this the head. Oops. That's the neck. We'll select here, double click there, name this neck. Hide that. All right, so the jaw, what we're doing here with the jaw is we're selecting on the jaw layer. That's important. We're going to go to this color picker. These are our colors here. We want to select the color of the tongue. We're now going to go to this is where we have our brushes for things like drawing. We're on the ink one so that we don't have transparency. So we're going to select this ink, and then when I take the bracket key, I can make this circle bigger. The circle is what I'm going to paint with. Oh, I thought we selected it. Okay, so let's go to dropper. There we go. So now we'll go to ink. There we go. So basically what I'm doing here is I am making the tongue that is, oh, that's interesting. Whew, it's doing more bigger than I want it. So I'm going to go to paintbrush. So this has some opacity, or so. I'm going to hold control to zoom in. I'm going to select this jaw here, color. Go to the paintbrush. This went over these the teeth slightly here. I'll press D, which makes this black as well as white. Make this too small. Drawing that line in. All right, so we have this here, the tongue. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna make this somewhat more straight. You most likely won't see this. Now remember, we're selected on the jaw. I'm gonna select delete. I'm going to hold control to zoom back, hold the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to go to the head, bring back the opacity on the head. The jaw is currently above the head, that's why that looks. However, when I move the head above the jaw, now you can see that it looks like, how it looked before. However, we have this extra color, which allows us to move the jaw up and down, which is the plan in Blender, without having the there be this transparency behind it. So with that work done, what we want to do now is bring the neck in, do a similar thing with the neck. So we'll go back to the head. We'll actually turn the opacity back down on the head. With the neck, we need to do a similar thing. So we're going to go to, when I say similar thing, I mean work with the colors. So we're going to select the eyedrop, select the color there, go to this paintbrush, let me go back to the ink again. So what we're going to do is the neck, very similar to what we did with the tongue. We need to draw this neck in. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the color here and I'm imagining the neck coming up. Be careful with this paintbrush. If you keep holding down the brush, this keeps going up. I'm going to go to this eyedropper, select here. So see this area here? We need to fill this in. So we select back on that paint. Paintbrush works fairly well with selecting and letting go. And see this here. A lot of times, like you can depending on how much time you take, a lot of things, a lot of work that you're doing in art will be what you're deciding to take your time on, right? So right here, right, this line isn't straight. So what we can do here is we can actually make a selection, and the selection itself will let us have, for lack of a better word, kind of the straight lines that we want. So then what I can do is I can hold control, then press comma. And what that did is that's a shortcut to fill in that selection. So then I'll hold control shift A to deselect. This gave us a fairly straight line here. As a matter of fact, there's multiple ways to get straight lines in here. What I'm going to do is press D to bring back. D gives you this black-white selection. I'm going to select here. And I'm using this, the plan is anyway, to use this selection to draw in black. Press enter, control comma, there we go. Control shift A to deselect. The same, my thinking is the same for here. This line here, kind of want to follow this curve. There's multiple ways of doing this. I'm tending to do this at this current time. Control comma. Control Shift A. Same for here. And the way you want to think when you're doing this is I'm making the picture that can be revealed when I animate this. I'm going to Control comma, Control Shift A. So that's what's going on here as far as what we're doing here, making this now. So we also need more than this. We actually need this neck to come out like this. It's kind of how we want to think about this. So we're going to select here, back to the ink drop, and we'll bring this out like this. So you want to think of kind of where the neck would be connected at. So I'm thinking like right here. So we'll go to the eyedropper, select here, back to the ink drop, select here. Now this won't necessarily be revealed, so you want to consider that with how much time you're going to take with this. Go to the eyedropper here, select here, back to the ink. You could also do this just by selection, like I could, might be actually better. Select here like this. And then Control comma to fill that area in, Control Shift A to take that away. Same thing for this here. Select there, go to selection. Control comma, Control Shift A. All right, so what we'll do is we'll bring back the opacity for the head. Okay, for the head, we have this line here. Let's make that cleaner by going to our select tool. I'm selecting away from the black line. Then I'm going to press enter and then delete. I'll hold Control Shift A. Excellent. Okay, for the head here, we can see this looks strange here in the neck. So we'll go to the neck. We'll go to the eyedropper. We'll select this blue here. We'll go to the selection tool and we'll select here. So we'll press enter, then we'll do Control comma. That looks better. I'm going to hold Control and roll the mouse to zoom back some. Bring the jaw in. Looks good. I'm going to roll the mouse to zoom back more. All right, for here, we don't want to make these into their own selection like we did with the other dragons. We want them all to be in a similar square like this, and you'll see why hopefully when we bring this into Blender. So even though the jaw is very small, we don't want the selection just to be around the jaw. We want, even though the jaw is about that big, we want this square to be the same for the head, the jaw, as well as the neck, right? So how do we set that up easily? Well, what we can do is we'll go to the crop brush, and then what we're going to do is we're going to crop this area here. We can adjust the crop like this. So now what I'm going to do is press enter. So now all of the other area around is gone, and that's what the crop brush does. I'm going to go back to the move brush. Okay, so now that this is cropped, what we want to do is export these different pieces out. So we're going to hide the neck, hide the jaw. We're going to go to File, Export As. We'll name this Head. Export. Export. Good. We'll hide the head, bring in the jaw. file, export. Remember, if you don't change the name, you're going to go over what you just put out. So we'll name this jaw, export, export. Now the neck, file, export as, neck, export, export. Okay, we should have what we need from here. So now we're going to go back to Blender. Okay, here we are back in Blender. I am going to go to a front view. We're going to start to bring in the different pieces of the art, go through this process. So what we're going to do now is hold Shift, press A. This brings up our Add To menu. We're then going to go to wait a second. Okay, I was looking for images plain. Sometimes my brain jumps back to earlier versions of Blender, so you can see image right here. So we want images planes. By the way, this images planes is something that you tend to use a lot in Blender for multiple different reasons, even reasons other than what we're doing right here. This is an add-on. When I talk about add-ons in Blender, by the way, it sounds like go somewhere, bring that into Blender, which sometimes that is the case. This is not the case with what we're doing here. This add-on is something that is in the default version of Blender. So when you download Blender, you have this add-on, you have to activate this. So make sure you go to Edit User Preferences, look for Images as Planes, put a check mark next to that. Then after doing that, if you're brand new to Blender, you'll be able to see this Images as Plane. So we press Shift A, we're now at Image. We're now going to go to Images as Planes. So we're going to look for our picture. All right, so this is the first picture we want to bring in. So I'm going to select here. By the way, if you don't see your picture showing up in your Blender files like this, if you look here, see this? It looks like 4 squares. You want to have that selected to have your images show up. So with this selected, I'm going to select, whoops, actually, sorry. I'm glad I didn't push import images planes yet. There's options over here. I want to set this to shadeless. What this shadeless does is this makes it so light does not affect this. This will look as bright as the original picture. So I have this listed as shadeless, all right? So I'm going to select import images as planes. So now we're in a front view. If you're ever concerned about which view you're at, if you look to the upper left, you can see we're in a front orthographic view. I'm going to zoom in. And what I'm going to do is press R to rotate on the Z-axis, -9, and then press Enter to lock that in. When I say lock that in, I'm talking about the rotation. Okay, so when you look here, you see just a gray plane. What you can do is look to the upper right. These are our view options here. This last one is rendered. When we select this viewport shading, we can see our picture here that we're working with. Okay, when you bring something into Blender, depending on how big it is, scaling and things will tend to work differently. One of the ways that I'll use to judge things is I'll do Shift A. I know we took out the cube, but I'll bring the cube in here briefly. Here's a cube. This gives us an idea of around like, oops, I selected that. If you right click in Blender, you kind of do like an undo. I'm moving the cube to the side. So see, this looks kind of small compared to the cube. So I want this to be about as big as a cube. So I'm going to select the cube, press X, delete the cube, select here. Then I'm going to press, oops, sorry. I'm going to press S to scale and then 2 to make the scale for that bigger. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to press Shift A, go to Image, images as planes, right? This is recent. Hopefully this will, there we go. So I'm going to bring in all of these pictures. Well, not all the pictures. I'm going to bring in our different dragons. So I'm holding shift to select the different dragon characters. So there's 5 of them there. I'm letting go of shift. You could have did box select B as well to select them. This is set up for principal shading. I want this to be shadeless. Shadeless means that color won't, light won't affect this. Basically, they'll be bright. They'll be how you see them now. This offset plane will make these come in like kind of like how you see them now. Like instead of being right on top of each other, they should come in like kind of like how you see them now, right? The rest of this looks fine to me. So I'm going to select import images as planes. So now they all came in. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z-axis, -90, then press enter. Some of them you can't see because they came in the same position as the plane. So I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate to view. Well, they didn't. They came in behind it. I'm going to push them forward in front of the plane. Go to the lower right, select front to bring these to the front view. I'm going to hold the front view. Hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. You can also do that same thing with this hand right here. I really like these controls in Blender because they let you work with the controls. Like, long story short, you can left click here just with your mouse to rotate. You can zoom in and out by left clicking here. You can pan here. You can select camera view here, orthographic view here. Orthographic view is kind of like a 2D blueprint view. These are useful. I'm telling you them because if you're not new to Blender, these are extremely useful, particularly when you're using a tablet. Anyway, I'm going to go to this view, this align view here to go to front view. I want to set these characters up similar to how they were originally, kind of like what you would do like if you're doing professional work for somebody. So this first one is here. Now these are all too big, so I'm going to hold shift, select all of them. And I'm doing this so I can shrink them down all at the same time. So this goes here. This is the one that's going to have extra animation. This one is going to go up and then here by the name. This one goes up then here. This one goes up and then here. This one goes up and then there. So I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. Depending on how far you want to go in Blender, just what we have right here. No added animation, just having these characters separated with transparent backgrounds. With this being this background plate being an image, if I hold the middle mouse button and rotate, you can kind of see, zoom in closer, you can kind of see these already have like a 3D look, which is nice. All right, so what the plan is this is going to have a basic 2D rig, fairly quick to set up, and then these would all have a rig similar to that. This one right here is going to have a more complicated rig. I'm going to show you how to set up the rig for this. I'm not going to show you, I'm going to show you how to set up the rig for that. I'm not going to do that same rig on all these because these are the same. Then I'm going to show you how to set up the rig on this, which is a more complicated rig. Okay. Okay, what I like about what I'm about to show you here is I like animation a lot. 3D animation allows you to have a lot of things that you didn't have previously, like interpolation, where you set up a pose, set up another pose, and then Blender will fill in the poses in between. My daughter actually has the patience to animate in 2D. My daughter Aliena, of who this artwork is from, she does 2D artwork as well as 3D box modeling, 3D sculpting, rigging, animation as well as texturing. She also writes. She does all this at the age of 16. So I'm pretty impressed with her. Uh, her animating the 2D, when I see her do the 2D animations, like, it amazes me because it's a lot of patience to do that. What we're doing here allows us to take a 2D drawing and have some of the smoothness of 3D applied to a 2D drawing without that much work. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to select this right here. So this is a plane with our image here, right? Right now, this is one plane. This has one face. So what we want to do is go up to the upper left, go to edit mode. Then we're going to right click, and then we're going to select subdivide. So this gives us one subdivision. We can look down to this subdivision menu right here. I was like, how come it didn't go to 10? And I was like, oh, okay, you have to go to the number of cuts. We'll take this to 10. That should be good for what we're trying to do. All right, so basically this is broken up into all these different faces. Now I'm going to hold Control, press A to deselect. We'll go back to object mode now. Okay, so this dot right here, this is our origin point dot right here, right? What we want to do is move this down. Blender, when I rotate, things will rotate off that origin point, right? How do we move this down? Well, we'll hold Shift and then we'll right click. So when I did that, I moved the 3D cursor. I let go of Shift. So with the 3D cursor here, this is where I want this pivot point to be here. So what I can do is go to Object, Set Origin, and then I can set origin to 3D cursor. So now this is the origin point, which is what we want. Okay, now that we have the 3D cursor there, what we're going to do is hold Shift, and then we're going to right click to put the 3D cursor here. I'm letting go of Shift. The reason why we put the 3D cursor here is because in Blender, where the 3D cursor is at is where objects tend to come in the Blender at. I'm going to hold Shift, press A. We're going to go to empty, and we're going to bring in a circle empty. I'm going to press S to scale this empty down. Okay, this empty object. What an empty is an empty is a non-renderable object. In other programs, there's things similar to empties. And Adobe After Effects, they have nulls, which are basically empties. Empties tend to be very useful because you can use them for things like handles. You can use them to maneuver other objects. They exist, but they won't render when you go to. They typically, you won't see the empty. So empties are very useful. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to select our object here, right? With this selected, we're going to go to constraints. So I'm looking towards the right side of the screen. This when I look at this, the way it looks to me and some of my brain works, this looks like a soda cap lid, like the thing you use to like open a soda can. So I'm going to select here. I'm going to go to add object constraint. And then what we want is we want a stretch to constraint. So now we have these options here pop up. So this is on. It's important to know where what's going on. We're currently selected on this character. So this object went on this character. So we're going to make the target be this empty here. So we're going to select this eyedropper. Then we're going to select this empty as the the target. Okay, just like that first type of 2D rigging that I was telling you about, at least the most basic form, we are going to add something else to this. But it's pretty much set up. So when I select this and I press G, you see that? What I really like about this is the smoothness of that bounce. So you might say, well, what would you use this for? Well, you can have the character breathe. You can have the character have life. It's very quick to do. It's also very smooth when you animate it. So I'm going to right click. See how this is like squished down somewhat? So we just press G and then move this back to similar to its original state before it was squished down. So this is very useful for all types of 2D art. And that's what you could put to all these other characters there. So yeah, even besides using the grease pencil, you make a 2D animation. you set up a simple rig like this. You want to present your drawing or your 2D art. You can set up a rig similar like this, and that animated movement goes a long way to drawing attention, can go a long way to drawing attention to your 2D art that you would like to display. Okay, what we're going to do is bring the character in, and we're going to put the more advanced rig in. So we're going to hold shift, press A, go to image, images is planes. So what we want to do is select the head, hold shift, select the jaw as well as the neck. We want to select shadeless. However, we also have this offset planes. We don't want this. We want these all to come in right on top of each other, right? So we're going to turn off this offset planes. So then with that off, what we're going to do is select import images as planes. So there they are right there. We're going to press R to rotate on the Z-axis, -90, then press enter to lock that in. They should all be selected, so we'll press S to scale them down. Take the move tool to move them into place. I'm scaling this. I'm looking at these other dragon characters to make sure that this is, a similar size to the other ones. I'm going to hold them in the mouse button, push this forward like the other ones. I'm going to zoom in, hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Okay, what we need to do now is make sure that the head is out the most. So we'll go to the outliner view. That's what this is here. We can select these individual pieces from here. I didn't even realize this was bent back like that, the first rig we set up. So I'm going to push this head forward like that. Then I'm going to select the jaw, holding the middle mouse button so I can get a better view. Push that forward like that. So we're doing this so that this actually can help. I selected the head again as far as how things look. You don't want to have these be too far away from each other. You don't want the planes to be right on top of each other. So while we're here, I'm going to select this, push that forward. So it's important in 3D to manipulate your view. I didn't realize that that was pulled back like that. So we'll go to front. So when we go to front, we're in this. When we go to front, we're in a front orthographic view. This orthographic view is kind of like a blueprint. It makes 3D, which we're in a 3D program. It makes a 3D view look like a 2D view. I'm going to move this over slightly. So with that selected, I'm going to hold shifts like this, move them both to the side. There we go. Okay, so what are we going to do as far as I'm rolling the mouse wheel to zoom in, as far as making this be more advanced? Well, we're going to temporarily hide the head as well as the jaw. So here's the neck here, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to put a bone in here. We're going to use bendy bones. That's the plan. We kind of have like this long neck or long gird neck. We can animate this to be where we can have more control than this right here. So with that being said, I'm going to hold shift, right click. When I did that, I moved the 3D cursor here where the 3D cursor is at. It's important because in Blender, where the 3D cursor is at in Blender is where objects tend to come into Blender at. So I'm going to hold shift, press A, and then I'm going to go to armature, and then I'm going to bring in a single armature bone, which you can see right there. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to press S to shrink this bone down. We're going to move this bone. It's important that we're moving this bone in object mode, by the way, because of the origin point. We want the origin point to stay here. If we move this bone in edit mode, the origin point would move. So I'm going to press S to shrink that down. So now this is generally how I want this to be. So with this in a position, and I'm going to press S to scale slightly to the side here. S to scale. Yeah, I want it. S to go. There we go. That's how I want it. Okay, with this bone set up in a general position, we're going to go to the upper left. We're going to go to edit mode. Okay, now that we're in edit mode, what we want to do is select the center part of this bone. So we want the entire bone to be selected. That's why we selected the center part. We're going to right click and then select subdivide, right? We want this bone to be split up into 3 parts. So currently it's set up into 2. When we look to the left, we can see the subdivide menu. If you don't see the number of cuts, select the arrow and you should see that. So we're going to take this up to 2. So now we have this bone separated into 2 parts. We're going to select the bottom part of this top bone. We're going to go to our manipulator. We're then going to move this bone up like this. We want the top part to be small. We're going to select the bottom part of this bone and then bring this down. We want that to be small as well, with this main part being the biggest part of the bone. Okay, what we want to do now is hold Alt, press A. We're going to look to the panel to our right. We're going to click to where we see, looks like a little guy running. And what we're looking for in here is viewport display. You're going to select the arrow to see the options. You'll see display as octahedral bones, which is what you see there. You're going to select the arrow to the right and then change this to B bones. So this is what B bones look like. This is what we want this to look like right now. To shrink this, you can hold Control Alt A. Oh, let me press A to select everything. Now Control Alt A. Control Alt S it is actually. And what this does, this lets you make the bones thicker or thinner. So I want the bones to look like that for now. Okay, what we want to do now is select this top bone right here. I think it's important when you're working with bones to remember which mode you're in. We're currently in edit mode, okay? So what you're going to do with that top bone selected is hold Alt, then press P. This brings up our clear parent menu. You're going to select clear parent. So we cleared the parent for that top bone there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to select the middle bone. We're going to go to the right menu and then select bone properties. We're going to go to bendy bones and select there. So we have these segments here set for 1. We're currently selected on the middle bone. We're going to change this to from 1 to 11. Then I'm going to hold Alt, press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is go to the upper left. We're going to go to object mode. We have our bone still selected. We'll go to the upper left. We'll go to pose mode. In pose mode, we have this top bone, right? So when I select this, you can see this is bone.001. I select this. This is bone.002. This bottom bone is just named bone. What we want to do here in pose mode is select this middle bone, go to the right, go to the bone constraints menu. We're going to select add bone constraint. We want to select stretch 2, right? So we want to have the target be the current armature. There's only one armature. So this target we'll select here. We'll select armature, right? Now this constraint wants to know what we want to stretch to. So it's this bone here. The whole armature is 1, 2, 3 bones. This is the bone we're selected on. We want to stretch to this bone. So this is the bone we're going to select. So we'll click here and then select bone.001. Okay, with that work done, we're going to select this top bone. Now when we press G, we can see that this bone, moves fairly nicely. So we're going to right click. Right click is kind of like an undo in Blender. When I press R to rotate, nothing happens. And what we want to do is we want to change this so that when we go to rotate this bone, this other bone responds. So we'll set that up. That's the plan. Okay, what we want to do now is we're going to go to, looks like just a regular bone. We're going to make sure we're selected on the middle bone. That's the one that has the 11 segments, right? You're going to scroll down. All right, so this is the bendy bones section that we're in. You're scrolling down. We're in pose mode. I'm saying this the way I am trying to emphasize which mode we're in, because when you're dealing with rigging, some of the simple things they can get you is it's very important to remember which mode you're in. I've spent a lot of time rigging. And with that, sometimes I still will try to move something. I'm like, how come it's not working? I'm not in the right mode. So we're in pose mode with the middle bone, with the segment selected on. With those things set up, how I just said, we want to look to the end handle, right? So for this, we're going to select custom and we're going to select bone.001. That's the end handle is bone.001. The start handle, we want to be just bone, right? And then where we see this end handle automatic, which is the setting for bone.001, you're going to select the arrow and then change this to tangent. Okay, with that set up now, when we select here, we can press G, have this move. I left click to lock that into place. Now when we press R, see how this moves? Very nice, very smooth movement, and that's what we want. So I'm going to right click, hold Alt, press G, still holding Alt, press R. When you hold Alt and then press G, you reset the movement. You hold Alt, then R, you reset the rotation as well. Okay, so with that done, we're going to go to object mode. We're going to bring back our hidden head as well as our jaw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the head. I'm going to hold shift, select the jaw. I'm going to press G to move these up slightly. Like that. I'm going to press R to rotate like this. I wanted it to be in a more neutral position. Okay, I'm going to select the head. There we go. I'm going to go to edit mode. I'm going to right click, select subdivide. Take this up to 10. We'll select this again. We'll right click, select this up, or select subdivide. It should be good like that. We took this up for some of the work we're going to do in the future. We're going to go back to object mode. We're going to select the jaw. Go to edit mode. This isn't absolutely necessary. We have such low geometry. I'm taking this up. In case we wanted to do something with the jaw, we have the geometry, some extra geometry. When you click something in Blender, if you left click on nothingness, you can tend to deselect. If you want to make sure you deselect everything, you can hold Alt, then you'll press A. So with this set up, we'll go back to object mode. Okay, what we're going to do now is go back to our bone. You can see this is somewhat hard to select, right? So what you can do with the head for now is, if I don't want to select the head, see how the head and jaw are in the same position as big, block? What you can do is go to the upper right. This kind of looks like a funnel. You're going to select here and then select this arrow here. And what this does is this allows you to have things be selectable or unselectable. So I'm going to unselect that. Well, I'll unselect it for the jaw. I'm going to leave it for the head. So there we go. So we're selected on the neck. So what we can do to make this easier to work with is we can go down to visibility, viewport display. And then the default display is textured. We can select the arrow, and then we can change this to wired. Whoops. I'm on the neck. All right, so we want this to be textured. So select the armature from here. Same thing, viewport display. Oh, there we go. There we go, viewport display. Okay, so textured, we'll change this to wire. So that makes that somewhat more easier to work with. We're going to go back to our Puppeteer. We have this display as B-bone. I'm going to change this back to octahedral, just mainly because I'm used to working with octahedral display bones. We're going to go back to edit mode. This won't affect, this shouldn't affect this setup here, what we're about to do. We're selecting here. We're in a front orthographic view. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, pushing a bone out here. I'm moving this up, something like that. And actually what I want to do here is you want this to be where the head can pivot. I'm fine with this pivoting here, and this bone, we're going to eventually parent this to here. So you want this to be in a way where it makes sense how the bone is going to be parented or connected to this bone. We want another bone to work the jaw, so we'll select here, press E to extrude, right click, push this out, bring that down like this. This is going to control the lower jaw, at least that's the plan. I'm going to hold Alt, press A, then go to the upper left. I'm then going to go to object mode. Okay, what we're going to do is go to our outliner view. We're going to select the head, select this arrow so we can't select the head when we don't want to select it. Okay, we're about to connect the neck mesh to the main bendy bones there. However, before we do that, we need to make sure this has enough geometry to work with. So with that selected, we'll go to the upper left. This is one face right now. That will not work for what we want it to do. We're going to right click, select subdivide. We'll take this up to 10. Press enter. That should be good for what we want it to do. I'm going to hold Alt, press A to deselect, go to the upper left, go to object mode. With the neck selected, I'm going to hold shift, select our bones. Then I'm going to hold control, press P. This brings up our set parent to menu, select with automatic weights. Normally automatic weights does an excellent job. We'll select here, go to pose mode, select here. Move this up, press. Hold Alt, press G. So it is generally doing what we want it to do. We could have more control over this depending on how close we bring in the transparent planes. However, this is what we want for now. We need to set up the jawbone to be connected, the head bone to be connected to here. So this is important. We're in pose mode, right? We'll select this bone right here. When you go to set up automatic weights, typically you go outside, you select the main armature bone. So how does Blender know that this is the specific bone you want to work with? Well, you go to pose bone first, select this bone, right? Go to object mode. Now Blender remembers this is the last bone that we selected. So now what we do is we'll turn off the neck. And to do that, to get to that neck, we need to go to armature now because it's parented to the neck. Select here in the armature, so it's underneath the armature to turn that off. We're going to the head to turn our arrow back on for the head, right? So we'll select the head, hold shift, and then we'll select the armature bone. Let go of shift. Blender should remember this is the last bone that we worked with. So now we'll hold control, press P. For this, We actually don't need armature weights. We actually not armature weights. We do need armature. We don't need automatic weights. We want to set this by bone so the entire head moves, right? So we're going to select bone. So now what we'll do is we'll go to our armature, go to the upper left, go to pose mode and see if this works. I'll zoom back some, press R to rotate. So this is working with the head. It's also grabbing some of the body as well. Okay, for this bone, we don't want this bone to move anything but the head. It should not be interacting with the body. Okay, so how do we deal with that? Well, one of the ways we can deal with that is we'll go to object mode. I'm going to deselect the head, hide the head. I'm going to hide the jaw, right? So now I'm going to go back to this bone. I'm going to go back to, let's go to edit mode. We'll select the bone. So this bone right here is what we want to control the head. So the reason why we came to this bone here is that it's named bone.003. Let's change this name to head pick B, short for head picture bone. We'll select this one. We'll name this jaw pick B. So we know that this works with the jawbone. Don't let what we're doing here, make you feel nervous. It's relatively simple. So what we're going to do is select back on the head bone, go to object mode. We're going to need to do a minimum amount of weight painting. Weight painting is a way of controlling how a mesh is associated with a bone. So with the armature selected first, we hold shift and then select the mesh that we want to control. I let go of shift. Then I go to the upper left. Now we have this weight paint mode here. So with this weight paint mode here, what we're going to do is hold shift. What I'm trying to do is select the individual bone. Okay, so what you want to do is go to the right, go to this triangle here, right? This lets you see how bones have been weighted. So we're going to go to edit mode. Oh, we're in the wrong thing. Okay. All right, so that we're grabbing the background. So we're going to select the arrow, then this to take away the background. We'll select here, hold shift, select here. Go to, whoops. We want the neck, so we'll select here, hold shift. We want the neck selected. There we go. So now we'll go to the upper left, go to weight paint mode. So here in weight, okay, here's our vertex groups. So this is saying the jawbone, which is here. We want this bone. What we want to do is we're going to go to edit mode for the neck. So these are the faces of the neck. We're going to go to face select. We're going to press A to select everything. So when we select everything, we're saying Blender, we want you to, whatever we're about to do, we want you to work with all of these faces here, right? The bone that we want you to work with is this head pick bone, which is right here, right? Even though you see the other bones, this is the bone we're currently selected on. So this is the bone that's going to affect these faces, right? So this weight, this 1.001, this means affect everything is what that 1.000 means. We want this to affect nothing. And when I say this, I'm talking about the head pick bone, which is this bone right here. So what we're going to do is take this all the way down. We're doing this because we don't want this bone to work with this neck picture here at all. So now this is set to 0, so we'll select assign. So this 0 should mean that, or should have, so this bone has no effect on that neck at all. We'll left click off there. We'll go to object mode. We'll bring back our head. I'll make it so we can't select the neck. So now when we go to this bone, I'll bring the jaw in so you can see as well, so I don't want to confuse you. So here's the jaw. So with the bone selected, we'll go to the upper left, go to pose mode. So it should be, when we press R to rotate now, only the head works. When we select here, the neck works. So this is working correctly now. Okay, we need to set up so that the jaw moves with this bone. So we'll select this bone. We're currently in pose mode. So when we leave pose mode and go to object mode, Blender should remember that the last bone that we have selected is this bone, right? So we'll go to, we'll go to object mode. Here in object mode, what we're going to do is, and the reason why I was telling you about the last bone select, see how it looks like the whole bone is selected here? So it's like, oh, you're going to select all of this and connect it to here. No, Blender should remember here. If it doesn't, if we have, well, not if it doesn't. If we have issues, we'll do what we did for the head bone. So we'll select here. That jawbone, we need to, the jaw, we need to make this selected. Let's make it so that the neck, okay, the neck can't be selected. So we'll hold shift, select the jaw. Select this again, because I'm not sure if we selected just the jaw. We should only be able to select the jaw now. Now we're selecting on jaw, let go of shift. So with that done, we should be able to hold control, press P. This brings up our set parent to menu. I'm wrong. First here, first the jaw, sorry. First the jaw first, then the bone second. Control P. There we go. And now we see set parent to. We want to select this to bone, or set that to bone. Now when we go to our armature, we're going to go to pose mode. So this is doing the same thing. The body is moving, which we don't want. So with this selected, we'll go to the upper left, go to object mode. We'll first, and this, when you're doing weight painting, first is the bones, hold shift, then the body, right? We let go of that being shift. Then we go to the upper left, we go to weight paint mode. And then here in weight paint mode, we actually, okay, in this case, we need to have the neck back. We want to make sure that this bone isn't doing anything to the neck bone. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to deselect the jaw. I hope I'm not confusing you. We're selecting this whole armature. We're going to hold shift, select the neck. All this is doing, us selecting these bones first, then the mesh second, is allowing this weight bone, this weight paint mode to be set up. So we're set for the jaw. Now we're going to go to edit mode. So when we're in edit mode, we can see that now we're selected on this head pick bone. We don't want that. We want the jaw. And we're in the next mode. We're in the next edit mode. So we want there to be no weight. So what we do is we say, what do we want to work with? Blender's like, you don't have anything selected yet. We're like, hey, this is all selected. Blender's like, oh, you want to work with this, and you want to work with the jaw pick bone. We're like, yes, Blender. So what do we want? We want there to be no weight associated. So 0 weight with this. So then we select assign. So then we'll left click on nothingness, go back to object mode. All right, so we'll select on the armature, go to pose mode. When we select the jaw, let's see what happens. So now just the jaw is selected, works. I'm looking at that little piece right there. You can go back and fix that, things like that. Now the mouth can be opened, the head could also move, which I like having the head move. Technically, that's not correct because typically when you have the jaws, really only the bottom jaw moves. The top of the head doesn't move. However, I like having the option here. So this is currently set up correctly. Okay, what we're going to do now is set this character up so the eyes can blink. Typically, when things are alive, you know, you're used to seeing creatures blink. So that's what we're going to set up now. So what we're going to do is go to the upper left, go to object mode. We're going to make it so our head is selectable. We'll make it so the neck is not selectable. I'm doing this by selecting the arrows here. So I'm going to click on the head. The way we're going to set this up is we're going to use shape keys. So we're going to look to our right. We look to, it looks like a green triangle. We look to where we see shape keys. You want to click the plus button to the right. This sets up with a basis, and this is like the like standard pose, if you will. So typically when you make a basis, you just leave this as it is. You don't work with this. This is it's almost like this is the foundation for the rest of the shape keys, right? So I guess that is what this is, the foundation for the rest of the shape keys. So you're gonna go to the right, select plus. So this is what we're gonna actually do our work in. So what we're gonna do is name this blink. So when you set up a shape key, we're selected on this. When we go to edit mode, we can work to have the eyes shut. If we click this pen here, we can go to scope mode. So we'll see how this goes. So we have this blink shape key selected. Our head is selected that has the shape key on it. So now we go to the upper left. We go to edit mode. So now we'll press C for paint select, and we'll select this area that the eye is in. I'm pressing the middle mouse button because we don't need that right there. I'm going to roll my mouse to shrink this. Oops. If you roll your mouse, by the way, see how I'm rolling the mouse? You can see I'm rolling the mouse in, nothing's happening, right? If that happens when you're in Blender, what you can do is look to your view here and then go to view 2 selected, and then basically your Blender will, your zoom in will work correctly again. The geometry here isn't that much, doesn't really need to be. It's interesting to note when I hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. When you have a character blink, particularly like a 2D character like this, you don't need the character to blink to have the eye totally shut. You just need the eye to shut a decent amount, and it will still convey the animation of blinking. So let's press S to scale on the Z axis. Okay, so that does not look right. So what we're going to do is go back to the upper left, go to object mode. We'll go to this pen here, which is going to let us go into scope mode. So here we are in scope mode. So we're going to go to the snake hook brush, zoom in, and you can see we can pretty nicely have this eye shut. I'm going to press F to shrink my brush. That's how you shrink the brush. This typically is so quick that this should be fine. It probably looks strange to you there. That should work. So, there we go. That should be good. So now go to the upper left, go to object mode. When we take this pen off, you'll see the eyes go back to normal. So how do we see this happening? We go to where we see value. We turn this up, and then you can see the eyes going there. That should be fine. Okay, the plan is now to make this easier to control. We can do that by putting a bone or setting up a bone to control this. So we could animate right from here. However, it would be nicer with a bone to do it. It doesn't take that long. So the plan is to put a bone here and then have that control that. So we're going to zoom back. I'm going to hold shift and then hold shift and right click. There we go. I put the 3D cursor there because in Blender where the 3D cursor is at, it's where objects tend to come into Blender at. So what we're going to do is hold shift, press A. This brings up our add to menu. We're going to bring in a single bone. Here's the bone here. We're going to go to the upper left, go to edit mode. We're going to shrink this bone down. We'll zoom in. If you move this bone over, do not move it in edit mode, move it in object mode. The reason why is the origin point is right there. You want to keep that origin point at the bottom of the bone. Okay. Okay, this is a bone. However, this is also a separate armature. So when you look with the, looks like a little guy running, that button selected, this is armature.001, right? If we click down to bone, the name of this bone, so it's the armature, think of the armature as being a container, right? And then the actual bone is called bone. So what we're going to do is name this Blink B, short for Blink Bone. So now this should be more easier to recognize with the name change. Okay, so what we want to do now is we're going to click on the head. We'll go to the triangle, and then we're going to hover right over these zeros here. We're going to right click and then select add driver. So when we did that, we see this pop up here. For this right here, we want to change this scripted expression to average value. We then want to click here and select armature.001. Then for the bone, we want to select Blink B. X location typically means that when you move something like this is talking about like how things are going to move. It went away. We'll go back to that. But X is, think of X as left and right. This is a blank. It makes sense to have this when we pull the bone down. So if we wanted to have the motion go left or right, that would be X. We would use the X axis. We want this to go up and down, so we're going to use Y. So what you can do is hover over here. We'll right click. Select edit driver. So this X location, we're going to change this to Y location. And then for this world space, we're going to select here and then change this to local space. Okay, what we're going to do now is select a bone. It's important when you're working with bones to realize which mode you're in. Currently, we're in object mode. We're going to the upper left. We're going to pose mode. So what we'll do is select the bone. We'll press G. So we can see when we move this bone up, let's zoom back, move it way up. We have a blank. So there's a couple issues going on. One, we would rather have the bone go down rather than up. Also, that's a lot of movement to get this to work. So what we can do is I'm going to left click to deselect, go to the upper left, go back to object mode. Okay, we're going to select the head mesh, go to our shape keys where we see blank. We're going to hover over these numbers here. We're going to right click, select open drivers editor. And here we can see some of the work that we did before. We're going to look to the left where we see key. We're going to select this triangle. We're going to make sure that we select value blank. We need to have this selected to work with our modifiers that we're about to set up. So we're going to modifiers, add modifier, generator. What we want to do here is to have this move down. We want to change this to negative, a negative number. And then to have this move, all this forward movement to get the eye to blink, to stop that, we're going to change this from 1 to 15. So now we have negative 15. Okay, so when you move away, by the way, from that window, it tends to disappear. You can also, or if you want it to disappear, I believe you can just left click on nothingness to have it disappear. Anyway, we're going to select this bone, go to the upper left, go to pose mode. So now it should be when we press G. There we go. So I'm going to right click to deselect. I'm going to left click on nothingness, then go to the upper left, and go back to object mode. Okay, what we want to do now is join this armature to this one to make things easier for us to animate in the future. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select the head, select the arrow so we can't select the head. We're now going to select this bone that controls the blink, hold shift. This is its own armature, by the way. We're going to basically connect this to this armature, bring this inside with the other bones to work. So we're going to hold shift, hold control, press J. This took on that wireframe mode because now it's with this armature. So with that done, we're going to go to the upper left. We're going to go to edit mode. We're going to select this bone first. The order is important. We're going to hold shift and then select this bone. I'm letting go of shift for selecting this bone because this bone doesn't really rotate. This bone, well, it can rotate, but it controls the head. Right, so that's why we're about to connect this bone to that bone. So now with that done, we're going to hold control, we're going to press P. This brings up our make parent menu, and then we're going to select keep offset. We're going to left click to deselect, go back to the upper left, go back to object mode with these bone selector. We're going to go back to upper left, go back to pose mode. We're going to select this bone, then press G. So you can see that now the eye blink bone moves. When we click the eye blink bone, it still works. So I'm going to right click that. I'm going to select here, hold Alt, press G, Alt R. That resets the bone, puts it back to its original position. I'm going to left click to deselect, then go back to the upper left, and then go back to object mode. I'm then going to left click to deselect. Okay, so how do we go about animating this? We're going to use these tabs up here. These tabs aren't necessary. You can get to what we're about to go through without going to these tabs. These tabs are named so that when you click on one of these tabs, you're basically in a Blender workspace that makes it easier for you to work according to what the name is. So we're going to animate, so we'll select animation. So this window here, we're going to click these viewer modes to the upper right of this window. This lets us have a viewer mode where we can look at what we're animating. I'm holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan, hold the middle mouse button to rotate. We can hold shift and press B to draw a zoom box right around our character to quickly zoom in. We're going to go to the upper right of this window, select viewing options. I've held the middle mouse button to rotate for this window here. By the way, I've worked in we're going to use the NLA editor to help us work. I've worked in the NLA editor numerous times to refresh myself. I looked at a video from Sukardi Blenders, the YouTube channel. I just want to give credit to him because he did an excellent job. I think he has like a 10-minute video showing you how to work with the NLA editor. So it's Sukardi Blender is what I was looking at. So right here, this is a dope sheet window. This gives us a timeline. We're going to click here. We're going to select the action editor. And then what we're going to do is hover over this line. So there's a line here that goes all the way across that makes up, that makes this space for the action editor. What we're going to do is we're going to right click, select horizontal split, come down to about halfway. And then with this, where this action editor is, we're going to click here. And then we're going to, whoops, I'm wrong. We're going to go to the left here. And we're going to go to non-linear animation, which is what I was just calling an NLA editor. When I started making this video, I was like, oh, this will be a quick video. It's not that complicated. And when it comes to rigging an animation, often a lot of detail, to be honest, to learn it is needed. If you're looking at this and you're like, what is this? All this stuff. If you are looking to actually do work for yourself or other people doing this, what I try to tell people, like when they look at things and they're like, okay, this is looks like a bit much, is when you're trying to do stuff for work, it's a good thing in a sense that it's complicated, because you don't want somebody to look at it and say, well, I can do that. I'll do it for myself, So anyway, it's one of the things I tell myself, and I think it's true. Anyway, with that being said, what we're going to do is the animation is going to be basically 10 seconds, right? We're currently set for 24 frames a second, right? If I click here, is that right? There we go. Here's the frame rate here, 24 frames a second. So there's 250 frames. So basically around 10 seconds of animation. So what we want to do is, one thing we want to do is have our character blink, right? One of the easiest ways to have your character continually blink is with the NLA, using the NLA editor as well as actions. NLA editor it stands for nonlinear editor. It's very useful for many things. For here, it's useful for, we can make one blink animation and then we can basically duplicate that animation and then place that duplication where we want. Okay, so let's set up a blink animation. So we'll select this bone here, right? To make things easier for us to work. I'm actually going to go back to okay. Wait a second. Okay, I was looking for keying. So what we're going to do is go back to, turn this to a regular timeline. We'll go to keying. See this active keying set. What I'm doing here isn't necessary. It makes things easier when you are doing a lot of animation. I would recommend that you do this, even if you're not doing that much animation like we're doing here. So I'm going to click here, and then what I'm going to do is go to, for this, I'm going to change this to location rotation. So basically what this does is when I press normally I would press the I key, I would have to select what I want to happen. Now when I press the I key, automatically what I set up for this keying, this location as well as the rotation, is automatically going to be put in. So we're on frame 1. I don't typically like to start off on frame 1. So we'll start from like frame 2. I'm going to press I, and what I did because I set up that keying, a keyframe was put in for the location as well as the rotation for this, right? So what I'm going to do is press my arrow keys, 1, 2. So with that, I'm going to press G, and then Z to move this down to make the eye basically go into its blink. I'm going to press I, and then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then press G, move this bone up, and then I'm going to press I again. So, and basically, if you're curious, when creatures tend to blink, your eye moves faster going down than moving up. So that's why it's 2 frames going down, 1 frame's going up, 3 frames going up. If you're interested. Anyway, with this setup here, right, we have this blink, right. So when I move the timeline, you can see that blink, and that's kind of like where I told you, like even though the eye isn't totally shut, it kind of works, or I think it does work. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click this arrow here. We're going to go back to our dope sheet. And then what we have now is we have this action called armature action, right? So I'm going to name this to, I'm going to name it blue blink. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this shield that says fake, it looks like a shield, fake user. And then I can press this X button that says unlink action. And then when I did that action, now I can go to this arrow and then I can select here. And now we have this animation saved as its own action. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to look to these 2 buttons here. We're going to select push down. And what that did was that made this action into this strip right here in the NLA editor. So this is our action editor with this window here. This is our NLA editor in this window here. Now what's nice is we can select this strip, hold Shift, press D, and quickly place that strip over and over again. I press Shift D there, by the way, to duplicate those. So now when I go back to frame 1, and then I select play, you can see the eye there is blinking repeatedly. That was also very easy to set up. Now you could have done that with keyframes as well. However, it's nicer to have it as strips, I think, and there's also other abilities that come along with it, the NLA editor, where I think it's useful to set up the NLA editor to do this. Currently, the animation is all of these different strips right here, right? What we can do to make things easier to work with is we can press A to select all of the strips. Remember, when we're working with bones as well as with actions as well, things with animation, it's very important to remember which mode you're in. Because we're working with bones that are posing, you want to bake, which we're about to bake this into one action. That bake is going to take place in pose mode, which deals with the posing of the individual bones, allows us to move these individual bones, moving the set of poses. If we were in object mode and we tried to bake in object mode, we would be baking the movement of the entire armature, not necessarily the poses. So we're in pose mode. It's important for you to remember. We have all of these tracks selected. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to pose, animation, and then bake action. We have this bone here selected. Currently, we have this is set for only selected bones. That's fine for what we're doing right here. The start frame is 1, the end frame is 250, which covers our entire animation. So this is fine as well. So we'll select OK. So now we have this baked action right here, right? So what we can do is we're going to name this baked 1. All right. We're going to click this shield to make what's called a fake user so that Blender will remember this. We're going to go to this X and then select unlink. For these tracks here, now that we have this baked, we shouldn't need these anymore. So now with all these tracks selected, we're going to select edit. We're going to go to delete tracks. So now we're going to go back to, I'm going to go back to frame 1. I did that by clicking that button to make the timeline indicator. That's what this is, back to frame 1. We'll click the arrow and then we'll select baked 1. And we could push down here. There's also a button here that says push down. I'm going to click push down. So now we have this as our blinks all in that one bar there, which is excellent. I'm going to select this to go back to frame 1. Okay, so I told you there's advantages to using the NLA editor. One of the advantages is what we're about to do here. We're going to click this check mark here, and you can see this says basically channel muting. So when we have this unselected, we won't be able to see that action there. What we're going to do now is we're going to press B to box select. We'll select these bones here. And what we're going to do here is we're going to press I to put in a keyframe there. Actually, you know what? I'm going to press R to rotate. I want the mouth to be shut. So I'll press B, select these bones. I don't want that bone selected. Select these bones. I'll press I again. We just went over the keyframe. So that's what's keyframe there. We'll go to frame 50. We'll press I again. We set the same keyframes because we want to put a keyframe towards the middle or towards this in-between area. We also want to set up a loop animation, so the pose is the same here as well as here. So this will make the pose come right back to itself. So now we go to the in-between period. So now we'll zoom back. We'll make this come up, over, something like that. Like this. We'll press B, box select, B for box select again. We'll press I. So now we'll move the timeline indicator. We can see we have that motion there. So somewhere in here, I'm going to press I and lock the mouth here. So from here to here, the mouth is the same. Then here, I'm going to make the mouth open up. Press I. So now we'll look. Let's make the mouth open slightly again here. Very slightly. All right, so we have this. You could spend more time doing this. So we have this animation set up here, right? So what we're going to do is name this, we'll name it head move. We'll select the shield. We'll not click the shield. What I'm doing is I'm telling Blender not to forget this. That's the easiest way I can think of to explain it to you. I'm telling Blender not to forget this. So then when I click here, a lot of times I'll click here to make sure that I know that Blender isn't going to forget this. So I'm going to go back to the frame 1. I'll select here. Select head move, right? So now I want this head move to be a bar. So I'm going to select push down. So now it's its own strip. I said bar, I meant strip. So the strip is an animation strip is what I'm talking about. So this is its own animation strip, and with it being its own animation strip, In the NLA editor, we can take an animation strip like this and then see how it ends. Well, what we can do is we can select this. We'll hover here over this line here to move this up to give ourselves some more space. Then we'll press the N key. We have these options here. We want to go to strip. Then we're going to go scroll down to where we see action clip. Scroll down more. And now we have this interesting thing, repeat. And what this repeat does is this repeat lets us repeat this over and over. So instead of having to duplicate this again and again, we can use this repeat. So we can select this. To go to where we want it to go. So we're stopping this on frame 246. I don't want it to go past. So 241 it looks like. So anyway, now you can see like that animation keeps going. Yeah, there's a lot of movement in there. It looks kind of strange. You can spend more time on it. We'll put back in the eye blink, and hopefully what you'll see is that with those animations together, the character it has life to it. So I'll let this play. So not bad. You could spend more time, working to get your animation how you want it to be. Hopefully, from this, you have an understanding where you can set up your 2D drawing to animate how you want it to animate. Okay, so we're going to go back to this layout tab. We'll zoom back. We're going to bring back our dragon background here. So we have the 3D-ness of our background being in the background there. I'm going to go to the upper right. This is our show overlays. We can select that and then make most of the work of Blender, so to say, disappear. When I say work, I meant like things that get in the way of seeing animation. For this here, if you want this to go away, you can select the select box tends to make that go away. We'll take this animation back. We'll click play. We can see our character animating there. Okay, I'm going to go back to the overlays, turn this back on. We're going to click on this here. We're going to go back to our animation window. Here we're in object mode because this doesn't have bones in it, right? What we can do here is I'm going to turn off this, click here. So we have this object here. So we're going to select here, or it's selected. We'll press I. I'm going to click this arrow here so we can see our keyframe there. We'll go to frame 50. We'll select, let's make this different. So we'll go to 68. We'll press I. We'll go in between. We'll press G, then Z to move that down. I'm going to right click and I want to move it down too much. G, then Z. My wife saw me working on what I was practicing before this. She's like, it's too much animation. So we'll press I there. So now we have that very slight bounce for the character there. And very similar to what we did before. This time we're in object mode because we're working with an object. So be aware of that. We're in object mode. So what we're going to do is we're going to name this orange bounce. It came to my mind. We'll select the shield so Blender doesn't forget this. We'll click the X, click here, bring it back to orange bounce. If you're like, why do you do that? I want to make sure that Blender, even though I told it not to remember, that remembers. So when I do this, I'm like, okay, it's there. So anyway, with that done, I'm going to select push down, right? So there's our orange bounce. I'm going to go to our strip. So we have this animation, this action clip, and then we have this repeat in here. So we'll slide this up. So now when we go back, we have that bounce over and over again. So very slow. So now what we'll do is we'll click here. We'll turn both these back on. So now we can say we'll go back to layout. We'll turn off this overlay. We can see the slight movement there for that. Also, the what we did with the eye with this can be set up for here. It doesn't need to have the bone in. The bone makes it easier. You can animate just from the all right, so as far as the animating the eye without a bone, I'll take you through this quickly. So we have this selected. We have geometry on here. Let's go in. Let's make this have more geometry. So we'll right click, subdivide. So we'll go to the triangle. We'll select plus to have a basic shape key, which is the foundation of our shape keys. We'll select here. We're going to go to edit mode, zoom in. We can hold Shift B to do a zoom box. We'll press C. We'll press R to rotate on the Z axis, like that. Because it'll be quick, it should be okay. So we'll left click to hold Alt, press A to deselect, go back to object mode. We'll test this out. So now that we have that shape key set up, we can animate, set that to animate multiple times, or like make it look like it's animate, or make the orange dragon eyes blink multiple times, and what we're going to set up. Okay, so how we're going to set that up, what we're going to do is we are going to go to animation, go back to frame 1. With this selected, we'll select the green triangle on frame 1. What we're going to do is we're going to hover over this value. We're going to press I right over here, and that puts a keyframe right on this, right? Okay, so to see this, we need to go to something called the shape key editor. So we have the action editor here. We're going to select here, go to the shape key editor. So there's the keyframe. So we'll select the arrows, 1, 2. We'll take this all the way up. Doesn't have to be all the way up, by the way. We'll press I. Then we'll go 1, 2, 3. Bring this all the way down to 0. We'll press I. Okay, what we're going to do now, let's name this orange blink. I'm going to select the shield, the X to unlink. I'll go back to frame 1, bring that back. I'm going to push that down. There we go. So now with this here, we'll select here, hold Shift, press D, Shift D, Shift D, Shift D. Okay, the shape keys, the way they bake and work somewhat differently than the bones. I don't want to. I seriously thought this video was going to be a short video. I seriously did think that. So we'll come out here. You can see both of them animating there. So I'm going to hold Shift, press B, draw a zoom box to zoom in on them. So you can see that you have like this kind of 3D-ness you can play with. If you don't want that 3D-ness, you can go to front orthographic, and this looks just like a 2D drawing with movement. It is a 2D drawing. You could also have it where there's shadows in the background. That can be set up. I'm hoping that from this tutorial you have an idea on, once you have the basics, you can actually go through fairly quickly and animate your 2D drawings. So I'm hoping that you know how to do that. I'm hoping that you have enough knowledge where you can add to this to be able to animate your 2D drawings how you would like them to animate. So hopefully with this video, like I had mentioned in the beginning of the video, that what you can do with the grease pencil is amazing. However, Blender's capabilities to manipulate regular 2D art, even besides grease pencil art, is amazing. Okay, guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like the videos on this channel and we share them, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel, you would like to see more, please subscribe, and thank you for viewing.